Imagine being fined for wearing the wrong color, forced to practice archery every week, or ordered to change your hairstyle on pain of death. These aren't rumors or exaggerations, they were real laws, enforced by governments, and ordinary people lived under them for centuries. Today we're looking at some of the weirdest laws in history, not as trivia, but as tools of power. Because every strange rule tells us something important about fear, control, and who gets to decide how people live. Let's start with clothing, because what you wore could literally be illegal. In medieval and early modern Europe, governments enforced sumptuary laws, rules that controlled clothing, colours, fabrics, and even shoe length. In England, the statutes of apparel of the 14th to 16th centuries dictated what people could wear based on social rank. Silk, velvet, and fur were reserved for the nobility. Even colours mattered. Purple was especially restricted. In ancient Rome, Tyrian purple dye was so expensive and symbolically powerful that only emperors could wear it legally. Unauthorized use could lead to fines, confiscation, or worse. These laws existed for three main reasons. First, to visibly enforce class hierarchy. Second, to stop the rising middle class from, dressing above their station. And third, to protect local industries and, control spending. The consequences were very real. People were fined, publicly shamed, or even had their clothing confiscated. In some cities, informants were actually paid to report violations. This wasn't about fashion, it was about power. If the state controls how you look, it controls how you're seen, and how you see yourself, and the idea hasn't disappeared. Modern dress codes, school uniforms, and even bans on religious clothing echo the same logic appearance as social control. Now here's a law that actually forced people to practice for war, even when there wasn't a battle going on. Back in 1363, King Edward III of England passed a law that required every able-bodied man to practice archery on a regular basis, especially on Sundays and holidays. This wasn't really something you could just opt out of. Archery practice was mandatory because, England's military success really depended on having skilled longbowmen. The longbow took years of training to master, and honestly, battles like Crécy and Agincourt proved just how deadly effective it could be. So, to make sure everyone actually followed the rules, football, dice, and other games were banned. Local officials were ordered to enforce attendance, and fines were imposed if you skipped practice. Pretty strict, right? The result? England maintained a population ready for war at all times. But there was a cost. Bodies were shaped by the law, literally. Archaeologists studying medieval skeletons can identify longbowmen by their enlarged left arms and deformed shoulders from lifelong training. This law shows how deeply governments can reach into daily life when survival is on the line. It also raises a modern question. How much should civilians be obligated to prepare for national defense? Finally, a law that tried to control identity itself. In 1645, after conquering China, the Qing Dynasty issued the Q order. All Han Chinese men were required to shave the front of their heads and wear a Manchu-style braided ponytail, the Q. The message was blunt: keep your hair and lose your head, or cut your hair and keep your head. Hair in Chinese culture carried deep meaning. Cutting it was traditionally seen as dishonoring one's ancestors. The Qing rulers knew this. That was the point. The law wasn't about grooming. It was about loyalty. Wearing the Q publicly marked submission to the new regime. Resistance was widespread and violent. Entire towns revolted. Thousands were executed for refusing to comply. Yet over time, the Q became normalized and even enforced by the population itself. This law matters today because it shows how quickly identity rules can shift from oppression to expectation. When laws regulate appearance, they can reshape culture in just one generation. So, why does any of this matter now? Weird laws aren't just historical oddities, they reveal a pattern. Governments use laws to mark who belongs and who doesn't, enforce obedience without constant violence, and turn everyday habits into political statements. The clothes you wear, the skills you practice, the way you present yourself, these have always been battlegrounds of authority. History reminds us that laws don't have to look brutal to be powerful. Sometimes the strangest rules are the most effective. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the laws that shaped everyday life, like the video, subscribe for more serious history, and click on the next video where we explore historical rules that sound fake, but absolutely weren't.